Is it happening? It's happening now.
Yes, I think we're live.
My goodness, I'm so excited. All right, we are live, folks. Ben, I don't see anything,
Hi.
so you're going to tell me when it's time.
Oh, I'll tell you when it's time.
Okay. Oh
I'm so excited to be your guest and co-pilot and tech specialist.
Yeah, you're definitely going to act heavy as a tech specialist today.
And anyone who needs me as a tech specialist is in big trouble.
Is in desperate need of help.
You're scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Oh boy, it's a little sad, honestly. But yes, oh my gosh, this is just so exciting. Oh man, and I got my fancy background. This is great. Yay. Ben, you really do have to tell me about the Facebook thing though, because I see nothing.
Oh yeah, you'll be fine.
I see it. I just saw it. Oh my God, this is so cool. Okay, everybody, I am just beyond thrilled and excited to be welcoming you to Pacific's, I think it's mixer number 15. Is that right?
Wait, really? Well, that's exciting.
That in the email, which is wild. The reason you're hearing me speak and not the gentleman on the other screen here is that I have the immense privilege of acting as your temporary host, so that we may get to know our beloved Benjamin Smolen, not as a host, but as a honored and revered guest. Ben Smolen, as I'm sure everybody here knows, is principal of Pacific Symphony, Principal Flute. One of my favorite people in the entire world. Yes, woohoo indeed, Adam says.
Hi, Adam.
Ben and I have been best buds for like 8-ish years now. Basically, he joined the orchestra and I was like, you're mine now. And it's been that way ever since. He is a superstar of the flute world and also one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And a lot of musicians will tell you those two things do not often go hand in hand. So we are very, very lucky to have him. Ben, welcome to my show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here.
I am honored to be here. I can't tell you what a treat it is for me to get to do this. This is so fun. I am very excited. So Ben, your fans want to know you better, so we're going to start all the way at the beginning, if that's okay.
Okay.
So I happen to know, because I know you personally, that the flute was not your first instrument as a young child. What instrument did you actually start on?
Well, if we're going to be technical about it, I really started when I was, I think, 1 or 2.
What?
And we were at Williamsburg in Virginia, and my dad had a little blue plastic trumpet. Oh. And he thought it was really funny for me to play it. So my mom left us for the day, and she came back, and my dad was panhandling on the street with a hat out, and me, like a toddler, playing this blue plastic trumpet. So I think that was the beginning of my professional flute music career.
You know, I had no idea that was true, but knowing your dad, I can 100% believe that story happened.
I think my mom was pretty mortified.
Oh God, that is hysterical. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Wait, so do you still have this blue trumpet?
No, I don't know.
We got to find you another one.
If anybody's seen it, please let me know.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I've learned something already right off the bat here, so that's very exciting. So fast forwarding, and also just everyone, I apologize if you can hear parrots outside my window. I have a lot of wild ones that live right near me. You may hear them. They're just enjoying Ben's presence. So after your blue trumpet experience, you moved on to a more traditional instrument.
Yeah,
right?
I started piano when I was, I don't know, maybe 6 years old.
Yeah.
Actually, our next door neighbor was a piano teacher, Sandra Vaughn, and so that was very convenient. And so she was actually the first person who ever saw me when I came home from the hospital after I was born. So I've literally known my piano teacher longer than anyone else.
That's the sweetest thing. I love that. So you studied with your neighbor. Did you go across the street to her house, or did she come over to you?
Well, sadly, we had moved by then, so we did have to drive. But okay. Yeah, I went over to her house, and so I started piano, and I really loved it. I was unfortunately never super great at it.
Well, that's not true. I have heard you play piano, and to this day, I'm still blown away by how proficient you are.
Thank you.
So you said you were 6 years old when you started on piano.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then I know you started flute, I want to say 10 or 11, I think you told me.
Yeah. Usually I'm always jealous of string players because I feel like you guys always start like, I don't know, when you're in the womb. But But for wind instruments, it's much more typical. Oh, sorry, my dog. It's much more typical for wind players to start closer to the age of 10, like fifth grade-ish, because you just don't have the lung capacity. Also, the instruments, we don't get like tiny flutes like you get tiny violins.
How cute would that be though? Oh my God.
So yeah, I started when I was 10 and I started the oboe. I really wanted to play the oboe. But I really wanted to play the oboe. And I did play the oboe, but I was really bad at it. And I was taking flute and oboe lessons with like sort of like a Broadway doubler. And
Interesting.
and eventually the decision was made that I should stick to the flute.
Decision was made by whom exactly?
It came from a place of shame deep within me.
As a lot of musical decisions do. I mean, I play the viola, so obviously I know about decisions based.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's delightful. So you switched to flute and you played that all through middle school, high school. And then came time for you to decide where you wanted to go to college. And this is interesting to me. You told me a little bit about how this came about. Tell me where you applied and where you ended up and how all of that happened.
Yeah, so I was a very confused adolescent, and I knew I really liked playing flute, and I loved playing in orchestra. That was like my real joy. I just was like, wait, you can actually get paid to do this? That's amazing. Anyway, I loved it. And I also found it really scary because you hear all these stories about how people take like 60,000 auditions and never, it's just a very competitive, there's no guarantees that anything will pan out. And it's a very sort of arduous process. So
Right.
I was a little freaked out about that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go do something much more sensible. I'm going to do musicology, which is not more sensible. But anyway, so I was sort of torn about those two things, flute and musicology. And so I decided to hedge my bets and apply to universities and conservatories and places that sort of have both.
Yeah.
So deciding where to go to school, I went around the country doing all the auditions that all young people do who want to go to music school.
Mm-hmm.
And taking lessons with various people, and I also applied to universities. And sort of when everything sort of panned out, I had a choice to make, and it was go to do flute at a music school or go do something a little more broad and general, and for me, musicology and other things. And so that's what I ended up deciding to do.
Yes, and you ended up at Princeton University studying musicology.
Yeah.
Explain to me and anyone else who isn't sure a little bit what a musicology major entails.
Yeah, so musicology, I mean, I guess in like a really basic form, it's just like music history, basically. So I was really interested, for example, in Russian music and particularly Soviet music and music history. And there happened to be a great professor and great department that specialized in that at Princeton. So that's part of the reason I was drawn there. And so studying musicology, I mean, obviously we were studying theory and composition and all that stuff too. It was
Right.
sort of like the academic side of music, but my focus was on Soviet music history.
Wonderful. I mean, it's really interesting because I feel like most performance majors get sort of dragged through that side of things when they're in college, sometimes kicking and screaming. So I appreciate that you dove into that head on. That's very impressive to me. So let's talk a little bit about where your focus ended up, because while at Princeton, you discovered and sort of fell in love with, I'm so sorry, I'm going to wait for this parrot to,
I love the parrots.
it's just too much, you guys, honestly. So you discovered this composer, and I'm going to try my very best to say his name correctly. Mieczysław Weinberg. Oh God, I'm so embarrassed. I can't.
Great, wonderful.
Oh God, don't please, nobody record that. So he was a Polish composer, correct? Born in Poland, Jewish, I believe. And am I right about that?
Yep.
Jewish?
He was a Polish Jew. He grew up in Warsaw, and his father actually ran the Yiddish theater in Warsaw, and so he grew up surrounded by klezmer music and sort of the folklore of the Jewish culture of Poland.
And he ended up needing to flee to Russia around the early part of World War II. Am I correct in that?
Yep, no, it's totally right. When the Nazis invaded Poland,
Yeah.
a lot of the Jews fled, and he and his, well, it's actually a really sad story, but he and his sister fled. The rest of their family didn't get out. They all died. And his sister actually forgot, I believe it was her shoes, and turned around and went back to get them, and she also died. So he was the only one who survived from his family, and made it to Minsk, and started studying at the conservatory there.
Interesting. So I'm curious. You're so knowledgeable. This is so fun for me. I'm curious how you exactly stumbled upon Weinberg, because he's not super well known to, I feel like, most musicians now. I think his popularity was sort of topped out in the 60s and 70s, I want to say. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So anybody who knows me knows that I will listen to Spotify and YouTube endlessly and just find the strangest things. But so back in college, that was CDs instead. So I would always go to the music library and check out just tons and tons and just listen and listen. And I was looking for something else, and it was an album, a Soviet album of the violinist Leonid Kagan, who I love. And it was various concertos, and I must have gotten it for some specific reason, but it kept playing, and this other piece came on, and I just was like, oh my God, like, was grabbing the sides of the table, like, what is this? I have to know. And I looked, and it was this composer. It was interesting that you were saying how you were having a hard time pronouncing his name, because actually when he went and immigrated to Russia, they changed his name because they're like, no, too complicated.
Oh, no,
so his name became sort of Russianized. But anyway, so I found that was the name I first came across, and was like, wow, this music is so amazing. And then just started exploring more and more. And there's very little available. There was at the time very little of his music available. And as I started exploring more, I realized part of this was he was actually a very celebrated composer in Russia, or in the Soviet Union. And, for example, Shostakovich claimed that he was the greatest composer alive in the Soviet Union at one point. They were best friends.
Shostakovich. Wow.
Yeah, but he was a Polish Jew, and so there were limitations as to how much the authorities wanted to promote his music, especially outside of Russia. So within Russia, you have people like Leonid Kagan and Rostropovich and David Oistrakh were all championing his music, but it never really got beyond that.
Isn't that incredible?
And he actually lived until, I think, 1996. But
wow.
But it's only been recently that he has sort of come to more attention. So when I was getting into it, there was like nothing about him. There were a few recordings here and there in libraries, but
thank goodness you stumbled upon that recording. I mean, what are the chances considering? My gosh. Yeah. So I'm curious. So you sort of, as I know Ben well, and when he comes across a composer that he's interested in, definitely an obsession starts to brew. So I'm going to go ahead and say that you may have become obsessed with him. And you actually ended up studying for, was it one semester?
About 6 months.
In Moscow.
Yep, I literally was so obsessed with him that I moved to Russia.
Yeah, that tracks. So I'm so curious, while you were there, you were studying, not just researching him, but you were also studying flute. And remind me the name of the flutist you studied with while you were there.
Yeah, so I was studying at the Moscow Conservatory, which has a very illustrious history in music history. So it's very exciting to be there anyway. Tchaikovsky taught there, a lot of stuff has happened there. And so I was studying flute there with a flutist named Alexander Golashev, who was principal flutist of the Bolshoi Opera. And then the sort of official purpose for me being there was to do archival research in the art and music archives for the Russian government, because all the information about this composer Weinberg was there, and that's the only place it was. So yeah.
So that's sort of what brought you there. Now I have a photo that I would really like to share, because it's just the most adorable thing I've ever seen. Okay, everyone, just disclaimer, I am not tech savvy, so I really apologize if this doesn't work well, but I'm going to do a share screen, and I'm going to do this. Okay, is everyone seeing this photo? I just cannot look at your little face. That's just so freaking cute. So who are these people with you?
Yeah, so these were the other flute players for the Moscow Conservatory Orchestra when I was there.
Okay, and were any of them, were they all Russian, or were there other?
Yep, nope, they were all Russian.
Wow, Wow. So, I mean, you had to have picked up some Russian. In fact, I know you did because I've heard you speak it. And I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to say something to us in Russian right now.
No, I'm not doing that right now.
Please. Come on. I
I
thought if
did.
I sprung that on you, you would do it. Dang.
No, I did study Russian. I was really immersed in the whole thing. I loved studying it. And, I lived in Russia one other time in St. Petersburg specifically to study it and get fluent in it. And I would say I was definitely functional and somewhat fluent when at least by the later part of when I lived in Moscow. It's all gone now, but I would very much like to pick it back up.
Well, you're free to practice on me anytime. I promise I won't know if it's good or bad. So we actually have a couple of questions relating to this. We have Rosalind and Kristen both want to know what got you interested, what drew you to Soviet music in particular.
That's a really good question. I think I was always really interested in, especially Soviet music. So much of the art and the music is tied very closely with the political situation and the personal situations between the composers and the government, or the composers and the society. I mean, obviously, like someone like Shostakovich, that's very famously known, but Weinberg the same, Prokofiev definitely the same. And there's this sort of, I just think it's so interesting when really difficult and sometimes horrible situations end up sort of pushing people to produce a certain type of art that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. And I don't know, I guess you can't say that's a good thing, but it's just an interesting thing to me. And I think that to me, the music of people like Prokofiev and Shostakovich, just, it has a weight and a gravity to it that I find very compelling.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing you found that in Weinberg as well.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, interesting. And then we have another question. When you lived in Russia, did you mostly play orchestral concerts, or did you do some solo stuff? Was there sort of a mix, or what was your performance?
Oh yeah, it was definitely a mix. The whole system for learning there was very different than the conservatory's structure that I'm used to here. In the US, you have a teacher and you go and you have your private lesson.
That's
it's
right.
Usually they're part teacher, part therapist, like depending on the teacher. But it's a very nurturing relationship usually, or that's considered to be like what everyone's going for. And it's a very like one-on-one thing. And in Russia, at the Moscow Conservatory, it was very different. All the students came to everyone else's lessons. So every lesson was sort of like a master class.
Wow, high pressure. My God.
Very high pressure, especially when you're not expecting it and you
seriously
aren't from there. But so the lessons were very, very different. We also had a pianist who was assigned to you for the whole time, who would play in all of your lessons. So everything was very much like a performance, more than sort of the more casual way that lessons are done here.
Yeah.
And my teacher actually was very nice there, but I have to say that in general, some of the Russian methods of imparting knowledge are a little more
harsh,
severe. So my teacher is very nice, but the pianist that I played with, for example, had a lot to say.
That's a very nice way of saying it.
And the other classmates had a lot to say too, to be honest.
They did. Interesting.
But anyway, sorry, that didn't really answer the question. So yes, I did play in the orchestra there, which was very fun. So I got to do that. I got to do chamber music, a lot of both with faculty members and other students, which was nice.
Cool.
And I did do like sort of a solo recital at the end. So it was sort of a little sampler plate of everything.
That's delightful. And I mean, it all happened in just one semester. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to have go on for that short amount of time. And I'm curious, in your orchestral performances, was it mostly Russian, or like what type of music was favored in terms of programming, or was it?
We actually didn't play any Russian music while I was there.
Cool.
I mean, literally, I told my teacher the first day of school that I was interested in playing in the orchestra, and I didn't know, is there an audition? What should I, usually you go play some sort of a seating audition at least. That's whatever. But so he said, "Oh, okay, you want to play in the orchestra? Great. I'll let the conductor know. Show up there today at 3." And so I go, and I don't know what to expect, and the whole orchestra is sitting there. And the conductor said, "Oh, great, we have a guest." He was like, so why do you come play Afternoon of a Faun with the orchestra and let's see how you do?
My
Which,
God.
for anybody who's doesn't know, it's basically just one giant flute solo.
I can't believe they just like
And
sprung that on you. That is
yeah,
insane.
so it was terrifying. It was a little bit of trial by fire.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we played things like Afternoon of Faun. I remember we did Mahler's Fifth Symphony, which was really fun. And definitely like a different style of orchestral playing, but really fun and very high level.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Very cool. And we do have one more question about your time in Russia, and then I will move us on. But Amira is curious. Well, actually, I'm not sure. Were you there just studying music, or were you also studying academic subjects as well?
I mean, I had music history classes there too, and I had Russian language classes.
Okay.
I wasn't taking like social studies.
I gotcha. Well, she was just curious. Was their educational system different with respect to other topics, or just in terms of music? So I guess mostly.
Well, it seemed very what I think we would consider here a little bit old school. Like the lectures were very much like a long lecture and then a test at the end.
Oh boy.
But I was just hanging on for dear life because I did speak Russian, but
yeah,
hearing like college level lectures on musicology, I would literally record all of them onto, it wasn't a phone, on something. And I would go home to my host family and we would do the whole lecture all over again. And I would just beg them to help me.
I mean, I was just going to say, that sounds like a nightmare I've had where you show
I mean, they didn't
class.
speak English either.
And
but...
it's literally all in this language you don't know. Oh my goodness. Wait, does that mean you had to, like, your exams, you had to write your answers in Russian? Good.
Yeah.
Lord, Ben. That is very brave.
I feel bad for the professor having to read them.
Oh, that's so cool. I want to move us forward a little bit. So, following your time at Princeton, you decided that performance was what was in your heart, and rightly so, because you are amazing. So, just briefly walk us through where you ended up post Princeton.
Yeah, so I was, again, really torn. I was like, do I want to go to grad school for musicology and keep doing this? Do I want to, I really loved playing the flute and I was very serious about it the whole time in undergrad. And it was actually my thesis advisor, who was the reason I had gone to Princeton to study musicology, who said to me, listen, it'll be a lot easier to come back later in life and come back to musicology than it will be to come back and try to become a performer from scratch.
Advice.
So,
right.
So he suggested that I audition for music schools and go that route if I had any interest in it. So I felt very self-conscious. Like I imagined all these people in conservatories for the last 4 years had been just, practicing 24 hours a day. And anyway, so I felt very behind. And so I literally was writing my thesis and practicing about 9 hours a day, just like locking myself in the music building.
You told me that. I mean, when we were discussing this Zoom, you told me that you were practicing 9 hours a day. And I mean, I know a lot of people who studied performance in undergrad, myself included, who never even came close to 9 hours a day. I have no idea.
I'm not saying it was good or productive.
Right. But still, I am very impressed that you managed to do all of that. That is truly incredible. Okay, sorry, continue.
No, so anyway, so I auditioned for a bunch of music schools and ended up going to the New England Conservatory. And the reason I went there, it's in Boston, and the reason I went there was one of the flute professors there, Paula Robeson, is a famous soloist, and I have always loved her playing since I was a kid. And not just her playing, but she's also just the most electric and warm personality you could literally ever meet. And something about just being around her inspires better music making. And so it was sort of one of those like rare opportunities to get to study with one of your heroes. And she had a very small studio, so that was appealing. And so I went there and studied with her for 2 years. And I mean, it was like the greatest musical experience of my life.
Now I want to show a brief photo because I have at least one, if not two. Let's see. Are you seeing that?
Yep, that's Paula.
Oh, there you are. So sweet. And I may even have one more. Do I have another one here? Yes. This one.
Oh yeah.
So sweet. Now, I love your shirt in this photo, I just have to say.
Oh, thank you. That was my recital, I think.
Oh, wonderful. So you two are obviously had a great relationship and you had a lot of inspiration from her. That's wonderful. That's always what you want. Uh,
Yeah.
that's great. And then from there you were in Michigan, I believe. And for your master's. No,
No,
not your
so
master's.
I studied at the University of Michigan. They have something, it's like an artist diploma, which
That's
in
right.
music
Yes.
is basically spinning your wheels while you try to get a job and you take lessons.
Get a job. No, I think that you tell me about how you ended up in Pacific because I should have clarified this with you before the Zoom, but if memory serves, you were auditioning while you were at Michigan, and I think you ended up did you end up winning the audition before you had finished in Michigan? Is that what happened?
Well, it's a little bit more of a tale than that.
Tell
Um,
us. Let's hear it.
I had never taken an orchestra audition before,
Mhm.
and I felt again self-conscious about this. Like, wow, everybody else has been doing this since they were like 12, and I'm so behind. And I was doing a lot of like competitions around the world and focusing on solo stuff. And I was like, well, that's never going to be a job. So I need to buckle down and take an audition. And I heard about the Pacific Symphony, and I'd never been to California before. And the symphony looked great, and I heard great things about it. But I have to say, the number one thing that drew me to that audition more than anything was that if anybody's familiar with Prokofiev's classical symphony, his first symphony, it's fiendishly difficult. The flute part is not okay, and and it's on a lot of auditions. And Pacific Symphony came up, and there was no classical symphony on it. And I said, "That's the orchestra for me."
That's
And
good for you to take an audition for sure.
so I came out. I was just finishing my first year at Michigan, and didn't really know what to expect from a professional orchestra audition. And I actually ended up getting runner-up, so I didn't get the job. And I, was disappointed, but also sort of happy that I had done reasonably well. And the person who won couldn't start for a while, so I came in and played for a few months, which was great, like amazing opportunity for someone in school to get to do that.
I remember
And
that. Yeah, that was great.
yeah, and so I got to know people like you and Jessica Perlman. And I was like, wow, this group sounds so great, and the hall is so beautiful, and everybody's so nice, and wow, California, like, how did I not know all of this? And so, but that made it almost even worse. I was like, oh, now I really wish I had this job. And then it turned out it didn't work out with my predecessor. And so the audition came open again, and I was like, okay, I have got to win that audition. And so I came back, started it from scratch, did the audition again, and I don't know how this happened, but anyway, got the job, and I was very excited.
I remember being so thrilled because the first time I met you, I knew you were just my kind of person. So when you ended up winning the next audition you took, I was just so excited. Oh my gosh. So during your time with Pacific, you have, oh, again, I really apologize for these parrots.
I
They're
love the parrots.
top form right now. I've been like throwing things at my window trying to get them to go away. Anyway, so you've performed. I'm sorry. They just really are interested and want to participate. So you've performed 4 concertos with Pacific Symphony since becoming principal, which is impressive, although I need a couple more from you, I think. So let's see, I have these written down. So in 2014, you performed Vivaldi's Tempesta di Mare. In 2016, you actually performed 2. You did the Mozart Concerto for Flute and Harp with now remind me the name of your friend who played that with you.
Oh, Grace Browning.
That's right. Yeah. Oh,
Amazing harpist.
Yes, she's fantastic. And then later that season, you performed a premiere by our then composer in residence, Narang Prangcharan, called Absence of Time. And I believe I have a photo from that, if I can pull it up without getting attacked by birds. I'm going to find it. Oh, yes. Oh, this is a nice one. Let me briefly share my screen. There we go. Ah, look at you cuties. Do you see it? Is it working?
Oh, yeah. So we've got Jessica Perlman,
Right here.
Rose Corrigan, I think, who's here somewhere hiding in the
she is.
audience. Hi, Rose.
Hi, Rose.
And Joe Morris. And really like a dream team. So much
You guys
fun.
are the dream team, truly. Look at these goofs. I just love that photo. That's so sweet. I'm curious if you tell me a little bit about your experience with that piece, and what that was sort of like for you, because that's sort of a unique piece that doesn't come around often. A piece like
Yeah, I mean, it's so cool. You know, first of all, it's so cool anytime you get to play a concerto because, you know, you get to be featured and it's just something that we don't often get to do. So when you get the chance, it's sort of a unique thing. And
yes.
so that was exciting. And then to get to do it with the three of them who are amazing and inspire me to like make
Yeah.
myself better.
Oh yeah.
That was cool.
Yep.
And then to get to do a piece that was literally a world premiere that was written for us and for the orchestra. Um, it's just interesting. Like it's so neat to me to have a piece that you're basically creating the first interpretation of it, like the first time
Awesome.
it's going to be birthed into the world.
Yes.
And I mean, there's something fun about that when it's just solo instrument or like chamber, but it's really cool when it's a full orchestra. And like, so, you know, we started just working on our own parts and hearing how those were, and then putting the four of us together, and then that's a whole new thing that we'd never heard before. And then
Right.
the four of us coming in front of the orchestra and then hearing what it's like with the orchestra, and
Totally.
then taking that and playing it for an audience and seeing what the reaction is like. So that was really cool, and getting to work with the composer.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really rare experience, you know. I mean, it's rare enough to play a concerto as a professional musician, orchestral, you know, and then to get to actually premiere one with your colleagues as your co-soloist is like a really cool thing for sure. And you were
Yeah.
in very good company for that. And then the most recent concerto you performed was Mozart's Flute Concerto in G major, and that was actually in January of this year, which to me is just
I know,
wild.
it seems like a few years ago at
Like,
least.
did we play orchestral concerts this year? It's just so crazy to me that it was the same year. Like, I haven't wrapped my head around that yet. But nonetheless, I was present for that. And I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit. So, first of all, it's an accepted practice for soloists to create their own cadenzas, often when performing Mozart. And that was a task you took to with gusto, Ben. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what you created for this performance at SOCA, which,
Sure.
yeah.
So, you know, the orchestra does this sort of chamber orchestra series at Soka University at the amazing Performing Arts Center there.
Gorgeous.
And I was really excited when Carl asked me to play Mozart's first flute concerto in G major. And as Meredith said, it's standard practice to have, you know, there's a cadenza where basically the orchestra leaves or stops playing and the soloist plays something that either, you know, it's basically just a feature for them. So either they wrote it, maybe traditionally they would have been improvising it, although very few people do that now. And it's just sort of a chance to sort of show off and have fun. And in the past, when I've played concertos that have cadenzas, I will very carefully write out something in the style of the piece, or maybe something that someone else has written, sort of adjust it. But this time, I don't know, I just was in a particular mood and decided that I wanted to sort of have fun and freak out the musicians in Carl as much as possible, but in a fun way.
Let's talk about the fact that you didn't tell Carl what was in store for him. I mean, I guess you have to explain what you wrote for your cadenza first for that to really have weight.
So,
Why it was so shocking.
yeah, so I had commissioned a piece by this amazing LA-based composer, Derek Spiva, the year before, called Grace Unbound. And the piece, well, it's a very cool piece. I mean, I think I've played a clip in a previous mixer, but the middle section, there's all this amazing layering where the flute is playing, the page turner's clapping, the pianist is clapping, there's tapping on the piano, and it's this really interesting layered effect of these rhythms that are sort of like this like ecstatic dance. And I really liked it, and I thought, well, it'd be so cool if I got some members of the orchestra I'll make some rhythms, and I'll start off like a totally normal cadenza, and then it'll sort of devolve into this crazy sort of rhythmic dance, and then it'll end normal again. And so I enlisted Meredith and Josh Newberger and Warren, our new principal cellist, and sort of coerced them into being part of my cadenza.
And I have, lucky for you all, I have a little cell phone footage that a friend of ours took from the audience. So it's not the most high quality, but you'll get a good sense of what Ben created, which was just so cool. So I'm going to briefly share this. Let me make sure I have it ready. I believe that I do. We are going to share this. And
Meredith, the sound went away.
sorry, is that better? Thank you.
Yeah.
Just so good. I just,
Thank you.
I mean, the fact that you wrote that and you wrote out the clapping rhythms for us to do. I wish you all could have seen Carl's face as soon as Ben stomped his foot. That first, it just made me feel so much joy. He was so surprised but so delighted. I think he just loved what you did, so it was definitely worth keeping that a secret from him for a little while. So since you talked about how you were inspired by Derek Spiva to create this cadenza for yourself, I wonder if we could transition into talking about commissions, and namely commissions that you have pursued for the greater good of flutists everywhere. So you've made it a little bit of a personal project, I want to say, to commission new works for flute from composers who you know get really excited about or are really interested in. Um, can you tell us a little bit about what draws you to commissioning in general, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, I think in general, sort of new music gets a little bit of a bad rap. And
Yeah.
I think it's for a variety of reasons, but I think that, you know, it's also a very personal thing, like your taste in music, and obviously with like the classics, it's stuff that sort of stood the test of time and it's sort of been filtered down through the ages. Whereas new music, there's everything, and you know,
Yeah.
you have to pick what you like. And so I always found myself sort of daydreaming about like, oh, I wish that Shostakovich had written a flute concerto, or I wish Stravinsky had written a flute sonata. Wouldn't
Mhm.
that be cool? Like all these composers that I loved from like 100 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And then, and I don't know, one day I was just like, okay, I literally say this to myself all the time. It's, they're never going to write it. But I could find composers that I find really compelling and whose music I really enjoy now, and see if I could get them to write stuff. And, you know, I find there's good flute music, but I find that in general, it's a little bit limiting. And so I figured what better way to fix it than do it myself.
Just do it yourself. I love that.
I was actually at a concert. For those of you who were here a few weeks ago when I interviewed Chris Theophanides, I may have already told this story, but I was at a quartet concert up in an art gallery in LA, and the quartet was playing a piece by Christopher Theophanides called Visions and Miracles, which run and go find it. It's amazing. And it was one of those experiences where I felt literally like I was leaving the concert a different person than I went in. Like I found that it was transformative in that way. And I don't really know how to describe that any better. But anyway, so I was on this like big high after seeing this concert. And I'd had this sort of thought tumbling around in my head that I wanted to start commissioning. So I tracked him down online and cyberstalked him and found his email address and wrote him at like 2 a.m. asking what it would take for him to write a piece for flute. And so he luckily said yes. And I think we shared some of that during that mixer. But anyway, it was such a fun experience. And I felt like I was so pleased with the end product, and just having that relationship with the composer and getting to work through that process was so fulfilling to me. So I decided to make it a project. Every year I would find a new composer that I loved and beg them to write something. And so Derek Spiva was the next one. And he wrote the piece Grace Unbound that I premiered the next year. And now I'm working with the composer Rina Esmail on a flute sonata. So I have a whole Google document with all the composers that I have scheduled out for the next few years. They don't know it yet, but
whether or not they know they're involved. That's great. That is really commendable. I'm curious. I think you sort of touched on this a little bit, but like, what are you looking for in a composer? Like, what draws you to certain composers in particular?
I find that I can appreciate music that's like sort of academic. It's like music for music's sake in that sort of ivory tower sense, but I don't find that it sort of touches me in the same way as other music. So I think for me, I have found that I'm drawn to composers who use rhythm and color in terms of tone color or combinations of instruments and interesting things, but is overall fairly tonal and melodic, and just sort of explores melodies in sort of a different way. So something that, like, I feel like, Schoenberg was all about, tonality is dead. It's been used up. Everything that's been said, that could be said, has been said. So we need to go to 12 tone. And I feel like there's so many composers working even now who it sounds like you've never heard before, but it's still operating within the confines of some sort of a tonal world that's just so beautiful. And that tends to be what I gravitate towards.
Oh, I'm right there with you. Absolutely. So when you commission a work from a composer, do you ask for anything specific that you want? Any sort of themes, any sort of technical stuff that you want to explore? Speed of the piece, theme of the piece, or do you just sort of leave it up to them and let them sort of present whatever inspires them?
Well, I tend to be the sort of person, I'm always afraid of stepping on people's toes in general, and with composers the same. So I never want them to feel like, stifled in any way.
Sure.
I'm coming to them because I've explored their music, I'm familiar with it, I love what they do. So to me, to like give them too many parameters is to take away from the reason that I'm coming to them in the first place. So, obviously I'm paying them, and the price depends on like length and various factors. So that has to get worked out because I only have so much of a budget.
Right.
But I typically, what I've sort of settled on is I've been asking for flute and piano because I feel like that's simple enough that people can play it. I want this to live on and get played, these pieces to be played by lots of people.
Right.
And about 15 to 20 minutes.
Perfect.
And that's basically all I tell them. And they get to know my playing. I obviously am familiar with their music. And so, there may be a little bit of them writing to what they perceive are my strengths or the way I play it. But what I want is just for them to write. And, I just try to facilitate.
Yeah. So you just sort of get to be surprised by whatever this composer that you love so much has created.
Yeah. Well,
I think is wonderful.
For example, when I first met with Derek to ask him about Grace Unbound, one of his questions to me was, oh, could I put piccolo and alto flute in the piece? And my
Uh-huh.
initial reaction was like, no. And I was like, nope, too complicated. I don't want to deal with that. I just want flute. And he pushed back a little bit and he's like, no, I really think that this could be really great. And I promise it won't be too, it'll be majority flute, but I want to involve these other instruments. And so I was like, okay, fine. And it actually ended up being so far beyond what I could have expected. And
Wow.
like the alto flute part in particular is just like,
Hmm.
I mean, it couldn't be any other way. So I'm very happy that I relented and listened to him.
Absolutely. So speaking of Grace Unbound, we have a little snippet of it for your listening pleasure. Unfortunately, now as Ben mentioned, he commissions pieces about 15 to 20 minutes, and this piece is about 20 minutes. I wish we could play the whole thing for you, but then we would, be way over. So I'm going to play a little snippet of it for you now.
Meredith's performing also.
I am also
A
performing.
very special role.
Oh God, this may be one of the most stressed out I've ever been.
I like how if someone didn't know either of us and was just watching the Zoom, they would literally think you were my personal percussion section I take around.
So true. You know what? I am fine with that. I would be happy if that were just my job for the rest of my life. Okay, here we go. Grace Unbound. Let's see if I can wrangle this. Wow, that is a wild ride, and I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever looked more terrified in my life. You can see me concentrating so hard. Oh man, what a great piece, though. I mean, Derek really
Yeah.
is unlike anyone else, and I'm so glad that you ended up, asking him for a commission because I think it just such a freaking cool piece. The whole
Yeah.
thing is great. I really wish I could play it for all of you. It is so neat. Maybe one day it'll be available somewhere on the internet. I'm looking through. Just want to make sure I'm not missing any.
I would like to say Amira asked about hearing the whole thing. It is on YouTube.
Ah,
So Grace Unbound, Derek Spiva.
Grace Unbound, Derek Spiva. Excellent. So, and Amira actually also asked, does that have Middle Eastern influences, or am I just imagining it? And I think certainly most of Derek's works have influences from all over the world. That's sort of his thing, you say?
Yeah, it's definitely like sort of an amalgamation of a lot of things. And
Yeah.
Ghanaian dance rhythms and Balkan singing, and yeah, so it's very possible.
Yes, definitely. So gosh, we've seen so many clips of, live performances, but here you and I are sitting in the middle of this pandemic when unfortunately live work is difficult to produce. So tell me a little bit of what life has been like for you since, everything kind of shut down, and how you've been making do and what's been interesting you.
Yeah, well, I have to say, thank you to everybody who's here, because these mixers have been one of the really fun
Yes.
projects to come out of this whole thing. I love getting to spend time with all of you every week, and meet and, well, hang out with interesting people, meet some new interesting people that are guests on the show. So that's really fun. I, if you guys can't tell, get bored very easily, and and have a little too much energy sometimes. But so when everything shut down, well, first I started composing. I think at one of these previous ones, I played a piece I had written, which I'd never done anything like that before, so that was exciting.
Wait, can we
and
hear these? Or no?
maybe in a little
You have
bit.
your phone present?
I do.
Might we hear just a little snippet, or perhaps the entire thing? Is that a possibility?
Sure. I mean, do you want me to play it now?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
You would love a little live performance. Speaking of live music.
Okay, so I believe that last time I played something, it was the second piece I'd ever written. This is the first piece I ever wrote.
Very exciting.
We're gonna have to do a little impromptu sound check.
Oh, that's right.
Let's see if I take these out.
I totally just sprung this on Ben, everyone. So it's my fault if the sound check is poor.
Can you hear me still?
I can hear you. Yeah, I hear myself. So I won't talk. Yeah, everyone hearing him well? I hear him great from here, so take it away.
Okay, so this is Opus 1, I guess. I called it Fantasy because I had no other name for it.
Amazing. Wow. That is incredible, Ben.
Thank you.
Man, multi-talented. Good gracious. That was fantastic. Yeah, people agree in the chat.
Thank you, everybody.
Laughing. That is wonderful. That is just beautiful. So enjoyable. And you said that was the first thing you wrote? Like first, just, I mean, aside from the cadenzas, that's just, you just sat down and were like, I feel like I'll write a beautiful piece today. And that emerged from you. Amazing. So we have a couple questions about compose. Actually, we have Teddy. Oh, Teddy says, oh, Teddy, I missed your question before. I think Teddy asked what your dog's name is. I'm sorry, Teddy.
Okay. My dog's name is Ponzu, like the sauce. Cat is Wasabi. All started with my friend's dog, who I named Soy Sauce. So they're all Japanese.
All of the
Japanese of some sort.
Yeah.
So next pet will be Panko.
There you go. Oh yeah, crispy. So Teddy also asks, Teddy says, writing a cadenza, arranging pieces for block by block. How did you learn to compose and arrange? And do you write out the entire parts for other block by block musicians? And maybe give a little detail on block by block, since I just
sure. And I think Ildiko also asked something about this, so I'll just give the Reader's Digest version. So please. After I had my composing fix after the 2 pieces and never did it again, I was still bored, and Meredith, actually, who's my neighbor, and Michael Franz, our principal bassist, who's also my neighbor, they would come over and we'd have these socially distanced brunches on Sundays outside. And one day I required that they bring their instruments so that we could play at opposite corners of the yard. And when we finished reading through something, there were all these people clapping at the gate. And so we had this idea that, you know, maybe we could figure out a way to safely play music with each other. We added a few other friends in Long Beach, Josh Rands, Laylee Resnick, and Christine Frank, all with the symphony. And we just started finding people who were willing to let us use their yards and playing outdoor concerts where we could space apart and have everybody, you know, in the audience safe. And we didn't announce them, just sort of played. And, you know, especially back in like April and May, I don't know about all of you guys, but in my neighborhood, everyone's favorite activity seemed to be just walking around the neighborhood aimlessly. So we had a lot of people out on the streets. And so we would play and we'd get, you know, a decent crowd of people, safe, but a decent crowd of people who wanted to come and hear. And there was obviously a hunger for it, and people were missing live performance. And we certainly missed playing with each other and playing for people. And I think I completely lost your original question, but anyway, so we call ourselves Block by Block. And we've been doing that ever since, and playing concerts just wherever people want us to go. And Amira, I saw your invitation to come to Irvine. I have not forgotten. Let's be in touch. Yeah, so it's been great. But, you know, one of the big challenges for us has been that flute, oboe, clarinet, violin, viola, bass, there's nothing really written for that combo. So various members of the group will arrange different pieces. And I've done some of that. Meredith has done some, Michael, Josh Mans, Christine has done some. I think Laylee's due for one. Yeah, but anyway, we've all taken turns doing this, and I have no experience composing, no education in composing or arranging. I had no knowledge of the notation softwares. So it's all just been sort of learning as we go. And I don't know, it's been really fun. And I think I've certainly learned about arranging and what works and what doesn't. I've learned a lot about string instruments and what will make them angry at me.
I love when he texts me and he sends me a little screenshot and he's like, is this possible? Like, can I put this in your part? And I'm like, if you want to get smacked, you can. But no, you're doing an amazing job. I have to say, Ben is very modest, but he has probably done at least 50%, if not more, of the arrangements for Block by Block. And to answer an earlier question, yes, he does write out the parts for all of the members. Oh, right. Not just him. So he's writing everything out, all 6 parts. So yeah, he's doing a lot of work, but he's great at it. So we're all having a lot of fun with that. I feel it's sort of a chance to experiment with something we don't usually do. So yeah, it's been neat. So I have a little block by block clip I can show as our sort of exit.
Great.
Because we've come to the end somehow. I don't know how.
I can't believe it.
so fast. I know. I want to just say thank you, Ben, so much for letting me take over your job this week so that the
I'm
world.
taking it back after this week.
I mean, you say that, but I might fight you for it. Actually, that's not true. You're the only person I would feel comfortable interviewing. Otherwise, I would just be way too stressed. Oh, thank you, Amira. You're too kind. But this has been a treat. Thank you so much to everybody who came.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you all. This has been really fun for both of us. And we're going to leave you with a short clip of Block by Block's performance of a piece called Ipa Gubbin, which, for those of you drinking wine and beer, means the old IPA man. So you're in the right place. And I will practice my screen sharing one last time. Oh, that's not it, is it? This is it. Yeah. Ooh, that's fun. That's fun to watch. Oh man, and Panzu's right up to you there.
Panzu has some feelings about it too.
All right. Well, we are gonna wrap it up. So thank you all so much again.
Thank you guys.
All right. Thank you, Ben. You're amazing.
Thank you, Meredith.
Oh, just my pleasure. My greatest pleasure. I'm trying to see if we have any other. No, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
And if anybody would like just a weekly hang with Ben and Meredith, let the symphony know.
Yeah, we can
Panzu.
set that up.
Panzu wants it.
Much less formal, but much sillier, definitely. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye. See you next Wednesday, 5 o'clock.
Do we know what next week is yet? Or is it a
Nope,
surprise?
flying by the seat of our pants.
Woo! It's going to be a surprise, folks.
It'll be announced soon.
Great. Okay. Thank you all. Thanks, Ben.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.